Good morning, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Adria Young. Thank you so much for actually selecting my presentation on getting youngsters to open up from a creative perspective. We got so many amazing presenters from all walks of life, either coming on remotely, either from Indiana, or just people who are interested in sharing awesome information on social emotional learning. So again, thank you, welcome. And so while people are continuing to log on, I want to do this icebreaker with everyone. Guys, it's been a hard year for educators, administrators, social workers, cafeteria workers, you name it, the gamut of individuals involved with the learning and the promotion of children's education and behavioral health. It's been a difficult year. And so what you see now is an icebreaker. I am a Generation X individual. What I put up as individuals are coming in are 4 songs. And so the first song being I'm Still Standing by Elton John, Rise Up by Andra Day, I Am a Survivor by Destiny's Child, of course, and Just Hold On by Steve Aoki and Louis Tomlinson. So in the interim of that, let me go back. If you could just tell me your name in the chat room. Can everyone see it now? Can everyone see the screen? Okay, so what I would like everyone to do at this time is, okay, let me go back. You can see the icebreaker in the middle of the screen. If you could just go to the chat box, and if you could just tell me your name, and out of those 4 songs, what represents you for the school year of 2019-2020. So I'll wait for individuals to respond to that, and then we'll take it from there. Yes. So welcome, welcome, welcome. For those who have just joined, you should see the introductory icebreaker. I would like to know what your name is. I said, Carla, I see you said I'm still standing. Tiffany, I am a survivor. Emma Ford, yes, I love that song. Just hold on. If you answer that quick question, individuals continue to log on. I'm gonna give a few more individuals the opportunity to respond, and then I'm gonna tell you what my favorite song is and why it represents me. But I see Carla said, I'm still standing. Again, Tiffany, I'm a survivor. Emma Ford, just hold on. Ryan, I'm still standing. Exactly. Yes. Keep it coming, everybody. Keep it coming. Okay, and so I'm gonna move forward. Yes, it has been a difficult year, but we are all to be commended because we, like Elton John, we're still standing. We rose up to the occasion, like Andra Day. We are all survivors, just like Destiny's Child. And of course, just hold on. No matter how hard it got for us this year or how the odds were against us, we continue to hold on. So we are all to commend ourselves for taking on the great challenges of what occurred with COVID in 2019 and 2019 up to 2020. So we're gonna rock and roll with this presentation. So I'm not sure if you all got the opportunity to read the objectives on my bio, but a lot of us are professionals, and we're good at what we do. And a lot of us have been in the game a long time, like me. I've been teaching since 1995, so I've got close to the total of over 23 plus some odd years. I'm pretty sure there are new teachers, there are some teachers in between, but we got a plethora of individuals with a lot of experience on this series today. And so what we're going to do is we're going to talk about relationships with students. Again, some of us are already doing these things. And if you're not, feel free to use some of the things that I am going to share with you today. We're going to discuss the powerful impact of providing a safe space. And then, of course, we'll address the activities that I decided to do when I almost threw in the towel due to being overwhelmed by the increasing behavior issues that I saw. Believe it or not, a lot of us are implementing social emotional learning competencies, and we don't even know that we're doing it. And so towards the end of the presentation, I'm going to show you just that. And so without further ado, let's begin. All right, guys, that's my story. I need you to go to the chat room and tell me, as an educator, administrator, behavior specialist, school psychologist, cafeteria worker, bus transportation provider, paraprofessional, have you ever felt like this picture? Can everyone hear me? Oh. Katie says she felt that way the first couple of months of school. I feel you, Katie. Absolutely. Miss Amber said at least once a day. Laura said more times than I could remember. Okay, so then I'm not alone when I share this. Ladies and gentlemen, this was me. I was overwhelmed. I was fed up. I was to the point where I'm like, I can't take it anymore. What planet are these children coming from? And it had a lot to do with the following. Now, keep in mind, I come from a family of educators. I was one of those students who put the dolls up in my room, and I talked to my dolls, and we had imaginary chalkboard and teddy bears, and we did spelling tests. So I was one of those kids, those individuals who knew that my destiny was to become a teacher. I just didn't know in terms of what would eventually follow with that. And what I mean by that is this. The taunting, the cursing, the physical assaults just began to escalate more and more each year. And so if you can relate to that, let me go back, I'm sorry. If you can relate to that, simply give me a response in the chat room if you've noticed the escalating of cursing and fighting and just children taunting one another. That was what made me actually want to throw in the towel and get my resume together and just simply move on to another career. Yes, Danielle, unfortunately, yes. So I'm not the only one that felt that way. On top of the taunting and the cursing and the physical activities, this is another situation that actually bothered me, ladies and gentlemen. This student impacted me more so than the taunting and the cursing. This is the kid that came to school only present in body, but there's an old song, I believe the OJs wrote it, your body's here with me, but your mind's somewhere on the other side of town. This bothered me more so than anything, because whatever was going on with this type of kid, it was just all held in. And so the escalation of the behaviors, the taunting, the cursing, it all became too much for me, on top of the kid that was only present. And so what else began to also impact me were the over excessive use of school suspensions. The repeated offenses of young people being put out and not getting a lesson behind it. Again, I know sometimes we have to suspend, but the students would only, from my experience, be expelled or suspended. They would come back and do the same thing. And let's also talk about unstructured detentions. What I noticed about the detentions was that the children were doing things to go to detention. And I'm like, that's strange, because detention is supposed to be set up so that you get a lesson from it, which results to you not going back, not that you would want to go. So I was gained for detentions that had rules in place, teaching the students the importance of why you're here and why you shouldn't come back, versus the unstructured detentions where children were actually wanting to go because they were having a good time. And so between the school suspensions and the children coming back, the repetitive suspensions and the unstructured detentions, I had just about had it until one day I went home and I did some reflecting. I said to myself, you've been doing this a long time. You're seeing these behavior issues. You notice that they're coming back from suspension and detention. They're still doing these horrible things. So I reflected, I did some personal inner searching within myself, and I said to myself, you know what? I'm going to take a calculated risk. The Facebook CEO, Mark Zuckerberg, says that to not take a risk is the biggest risk of all time. And so sometimes if we don't take risk and ask questions, the change that we're looking for may never occur. And so I decided to take a chance, and my ideal was not any Albert Einstein kind of situation. It wasn't something that I had to go and write a thesis for. It was just a simple thought. And so I thought to myself, I'm going to take a chance. I'm going to ask the worst children from my caseload, my classroom, to have lunch with me. And guess what? To my surprise, they said yes. Now you're thinking with children, and I'm working with 12 and 13-year-olds, they're like, lady, I'm not going to give up my time for you. Go kick rocks. This is my personal time. But they actually agreed to meet up with me. And so we met up. We simply just came into my classroom. We established rules. Basically, what goes on in the classroom stays in the classroom. We did it from a non-judgmental standpoint. It started off twice a week for 30 minutes. And of course, we called it the lunch bunch. And it emerged to something that actually went from 2 days a week to 3 days a week. And so, again, a judgment-free zone was established. What we talked about stayed in the classroom. Now, here's the deal. There were some things that came out that was, of course, beyond my role as a professionalism. If there were situations that mandatorily had to be reported when we had our discussions, definitely I was obligated to tell the behavior specialist or the school social worker about that situation. Because again, if it was something that was pertaining to abuse or something of that nature, of course, we're obligated to report it. Otherwise, what we talked about, we let our hair down, they expressed themselves. Again, what we talked about, for the most part, it stayed in the room. And anything that was severe, again, I took it to the authorities. So prior to doing or conducting our lunch bunch series, we know that our children come to us on edge a lot of times. They bring a lot of baggage to us, you know, a lot that what goes on with them or what occurs with them, we see a lot of it. So what I decided to do was simply just to implement a meditation piece. Just for 2 minutes, we would come in, we would quietly listen to some music without words. We would close our eyes and we would take a deep breath. And so I'm going to encourage you all, if you want to, no pressure, to join me in this 1 minute segment of meditation. And it does work. Studies show that it's good for the emotional health. It's great for anxiety. It even helps with us teachers if we could just get a couple of moments to ourselves just to deep breathe and relax prior to our students entering the classroom on a daily basis. So I am going to play this meditative piece, and feel free to join me. And if everyone could just close their eyes, take a deep breath. Breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe in. And breathe out. Take yourself to that happy space. Take yourself to that thought or that person in your life or that one occasion or situation that made you happy. Take a deep breath in and out. And so thank you, everyone, for doing that with me. And so what we began to do prior to having our conversations, we had established our safe place. We did a meditation piece prior to starting off our topics. And again, what this did was it basically calmed everybody down, including me. And so the big picture, a shift in my thought process. In the beginning, we talked about how I wanted to throw in the towel and how I was tired of escalating behaviors that I continued to see, only to, once we got to know each other and once we established boundaries and rules, to discover that it wasn't about them being the worst children, it was the circumstances that they were presented with and them not having the channels or the appropriate tools on how to solve their problems. One of my favorite speakers and authors is Stephen Covey. And Stephen Covey had always mentioned this, and to this day, I still believe in this quote. And the quote goes, seek to understand first prior to being understood. Again, the quote was, seek first to understand prior to being understood. And so when I started looking at it this way, understanding the ordeals that the youngsters were going through, I began to feel better and more confident in my job, understanding why the students were reacting to certain situations the way that they did. And so let's get into the creativity and action. Again, you know that we already talked about, we had created a safe space. We met up 3 times a week for 30 minutes. But this is where we get down into the performance roles. The students decided to take their actual behavior issues or ordeals, and they turned them into different skits, also known as monologues. And what they decided to do was act out the real life situations in front of the students, in front of each other during lunch bunch. And I'm saying to myself, this is awesome. And so here's a picture of them standing up, you know, actually reenacting their ordeal or their problem, or, you know, what may have gotten them suspended or placed in detention. Again, we've got a non-judgment free zone going here, and everybody is comfortable enough to discuss what took place, but they're doing it from a performance standpoint. So the pros of performance. The students got an opportunity to demonstrate their acting skills in front of children that we trusted. Remember, we established a relationship, and of course, we began to build bonds. We became like a family. And guess what? Some of the students also came to find that a spark occurred. If they had never thought about actually acting before, they began to think about it. And they would actually come up to me and say, Miss Young, I'm pretty good at that. You know, I didn't think that I would be able to act, but I really like it. And I like the fact that I'm able to get what's going on with me off of my chest through a creative standpoint. So we're not far-fetched, and actually the ideals to perform and act are not far-fetched from social-emotional learning. And here is what studies say about acting or performance. Take a look at the bullets. It says study shows that acting, drama, it improves self-confidence, imagination. In particular, if you look at the empathy and trust, remember, that's the first thing, or one of the first things we built when we first created our lunch bunch. The cooperation and collaboration piece, that came into play as well. And we're gonna discuss the second component of how cooperation played a role that tied into them doing these skits pertaining to their behavior issues. And it was fun. Students that weren't smiling in the beginning when they first started with the stone faces, they were able to let their hair down. They took it seriously, but they actually enjoyed it. And of course, it was room for growth. Youngsters started seeing that, hey, that situation that occurred, I could have done better. I could have made a better choice. And if I'm put in that situation again, I may not make that negative selection. The power of peer-to-peer feedback. Now, a lot of us may think, oh, my students love me, or parents per se may think, my students love me, or my children love me per se, and so they listen to me. And yes, they do listen to us, but I'm here to tell you, everybody, and I'm not trying to bust anyone's bubble. Peers value the opinions of other peers more than anyone else. And so the power of this is that when the students begin to act out their real life situations, whether it was a fight, a disrespectful situation with a teacher, walking out of class, or just to anything, to cursing, they had come to find that when they acted out that skit pertaining to that behavior, the suggestions that came back from the other students, they were susceptible, and they actually listened to one another, give suggestions on how they could have handled that ordeal. Take a look at slide 23. This young man here in the white. Now, in the beginning, I could not get him to buy into the situation, but the young man in the white t-shirt, he became one of my lead peer students, also known as a junior facilitator. He became one of my junior facilitators, and let me explain that to you. That is when students follow your lead, they watch how you actually implement the session, and then they become like a second teacher. And it got to the point that this young man in the white shirt, he became like the second teacher. And the other students actually listened to him as he provided constructive criticism on feedback on how to handle that situation the next time. They all listened to each other. And as you can see right now in that picture, they are actually reflecting. And so not only did acting out their issues create an opportunity for them to get the conflict or the ordeal off of their chest in front of trusted individuals, they got the time to get suggestions from people their age, not just teachers, not behavior specialists, but youngsters their age. They got the opportunity to share ideas on how to do better the next time in the event that they are put in that situation. And so growth, growth, growth. The students, through acting, through reflecting, through collaboration, you saw a decline in the suspensions. I know I did with my group. You saw a decline with students being placed in in-house school suspension. You saw the growth in the students because they began to accept responsibility for their choices. And more importantly, I had students who would not buy into the ordeal originally, who began to buy into it and become actual junior facilitators. So it was a win-win situation for us all. And I'm going to raise the roof for growth because that's what I was looking for. I not only saw the growth in the students, I saw the growth in myself, and it worked. It worked. And so in the beginning of the presentation, I mentioned that some of us may automatically or may be doing or implementing the socio-emotional competencies and not are aware of it. Let me give you an example of what I meant by that. If you take a look at the sensory integration, that's the first one. These are the 7 socio-emotional competencies adopted by the state of Indiana. The first one being sensory integration. Notice how to get my students acclimated or calm prior to our sessions that we did meditation. Well, maybe a lot of us weren't aware of that, but meditation falls directly into sensory integration. And I'm not going to go through all of them. I'm going to skip down to number 4, the orange one, collaboration. And so notice how the students began to work as team players. They acted out the different situations in front of one another. They got the chance to problem solve. They got the chance to provide suggestions on how to respond or react to the negative situations in the event that they took place again. Connection. Again, that goes back to creating a safe space, building trust, keeping what was going on or that ordeal in the classroom between us, unless it was a serious situation. And of course, if those serious situations had to be reported, I, as the teacher, had an obligation to make sure that those situations over my head as an educator were reported to the respective parties. Critical thinking took place because the children got a chance to reflect on the situation. And of course, mindset. In the beginning, sorry about that. You got to remember, in the beginning, I chose to select the children that were had situations of repetitive offenses. And because I asked them and they said yes, we became a team. And because of that, we both grew from it. And I saw a decline in behavior situations. I saw a decline in students being placed in in-house school suspension. And more importantly, I saw students feel more confident about themselves. And I, of course, fell back in love with my job. So basically, that is it. I'm up for questions. I thank you all so much for listening. So if you have any questions that you would like to hit me up with in the chat room, we can do that now. So I'm going to try to go to the chat box for any questions. Any questions? Good question. Lana, I invite Lana, I'm going to respond to you first, Don. I invited 12.
Audrey, would you mind dropping your email in the chat box so that those that might have some questions later that may not be able to think about it right now could shoot you an email or to have a chat with you?
Yeah, and if we have a few minutes, Chris, I think we got a few minutes if they want to ask some questions. I'm up for some now because the session doesn't end, I don't believe, for another, what?
Yeah, we've got plenty of time. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Laura, you are welcome. And I need to, everyone, if you did not see my email, I'm gonna send it again. It's adyu5@aol.com. A good question, Danielle. What adaptations would you make for younger elementary? Basically, what I've come to find, Danielle, and I'm not sure if you can hear me, is that most of the problems that impact middle school and high school, they also impact the elementary students as well. What I recommend for adapting for younger students is simply the vocabulary. Other than that, it would be the same thing, if that makes sense to you.